I'm going to talk about the local nature recovery strategy and where that fits in to this whole picture in terms of providing a framework, vision, and potential next steps. Can you move on to the next one, please? So, for those of you who are unaware of local nature recovery strategies, hopefully, because they cover the whole of England, most people have at least heard of them. The map on the right of the slide shows the 48 different areas that are in the process of producing a local nature recovery strategy. And because if you're like me, you find it really difficult to orient yourself without Wales stuck on the side of the map, the Liverpool city region is the little pink squiggle, and Wales comes off just below that. We're right on the corner. So there are 48 areas in total. Each one of those will, over the next year, be producing a local nature recovery strategy. So what is it, is the question. Well, the strategy is a spatial strategy that has to be locally based and evidence-led. Importantly, it's vital to remember what it is not. It is not a delivery plan, and we'll come back to that later. The idea of the local nature recovery strategy is to work with stakeholders and local experts to agree priorities for the recovery of nature, because as we all know, nature is in a parlous state across the whole of the globe, and England is no exception to that. Liverpool city region itself has lost an astonishing number of its habitats and species over the past 50 years, and it's a real priority for all of us to play our part in recovering that. So the strategy will agree those priorities, and it will then map where those existing valuable areas sit. Most of these are protected sites. So most of these are already in the public domain and quite straightforward to map. But we'll also be mapping then the most complicated part, which is mapping the specific opportunities where we can create the most benefit for nature networks and for wider environmental goals for communities. And the outputs of the strategy are in two parts. There's the snappily titled Statement of Biodiversity Priorities, which is basically the written strategy. And then there's a Nature Recovery Opportunities Map, which we call the Local Habitat Map. And as I said, over the next year, you will see many local authorities starting to publish their maps for consultation. I would encourage you to get involved in that. Greater Manchester's is out at the moment. I think it's about to close the consultation. With a fair wind, we'll be publishing ours later this month for consultation. And we have Cheshire and Warrington, Lancashire and Cumbria are all coming along. So if you are in the Northwest, please keep an eye on the relevant website for the area that you are in and have your say during the consultation, because that local knowledge will be absolutely vital to getting this right. Next slide, please. To give you an idea of how it's shaping up, the strategy itself, and this is the draft front cover of ours, sets out what we need to do, pretty much. It says the usual things that you would all imagine. The importance of creating a nature network, the importance of habitats being bigger and higher quality and more joined up, and getting the right habitat for the right place. But importantly, it also widens it to talk about, the technical term, the ecosystem benefits, the other benefits that we all know that nature can provide for our communities, and to support that collaboration and actions for every member of the community, however small or large. In particular, it sets a series of priorities for habitats and species that locally to us will give us the most benefit to enhance those nature networks. Next slide. Just to give you a quick example, Liverpool city region, as you might imagine, is very much shaped by our water environment as an estuarine environment with a huge number of brooks and streams and canals, and of course the River Mersey in our coastal areas. Wetlands and watercourses is a real priority for us, and of course the strategy recognises that. So it sets out what our priority is, why we want to achieve this, and importantly how we see that happening. So it's not just saying the high-level vision of having a well-connected, naturally functioning network of wetland, pond and river habitats, but it's saying how we want that to be done and how it would be delivered. So these are what we call our measures. And these are what we're mapping on our opportunity map. Next slide. We started our mapping by setting out what's there already. Liverpool City region is very blessed with our protected landscapes. We have about 40% of our strategy area is already designated for nature protection. That's mostly to do with the fact that we have this extensive intertidal zone that we needed to take account of. But you can see that across even the most urban areas, we have a network of protected sites. And our priority was to support the species that make use of those sites, to buffer them and to create networks for species to move through the landscape and sustain their populations, partly in the face of climate change and sea level rise, which will affect some of our precious coastal communities of nature. So having done that, next one, we then went through a complex modelling process to come up with where we see the best opportunities for nature to sustain those nature networks I just mentioned. And I should say that we also worked across borders with our neighbours in Warrington, Greater Manchester, Lancashire and Cheshire to make sure that, as we all know, nature doesn't stop at our borders. It was really important to get that connectivity between us. And we've been really helped by our neighbours to focus our efforts and make sure that we got the right habitats on those borders for the connected networks that we see. The map, because we're trying to depict a very complex geography and because we have a kind of a long and skinny L-shaped geography, it's very difficult for you to see that on a slide. During the consultation period, the interactive map that people will be able to access, and I think this is true for most of the other local nature recovery strategies as well, will be available for people to go on and interrogate and zoom into, click on the different parcels of land, and you'll be able to see what measure is recommended for each individual parcel. And then you can have your say as to whether you agree with that or not, of course. And as I said, I would encourage you all, if you have the opportunity to go to engage with this consultation process, because these strategies will only be as good as the feedback that we get from local people on the ground who know their patch really well and are prepared to get involved. In total, we've come up with 36 priorities for nature recovery, and that's across 85 measures, which are the actions, and we've managed to map 68 of those. So even though that map looks very busy, if you were to be able to zoom into that, you would see that actually there is quite a lot of unmapped space in there. We've actually mapped just under 35% of our strategy area with particular priorities for nature recovery. I think the next one is the last one, is it? Yes. So just a quick summary for the next steps and perhaps as a prompt for discussion. As I said to start with, the LNRS is not a delivery plan. That will form part of the challenge for all of us over the next couple of years to turn this into action. It sets out a map for where we can take action and some of the what we can do, and it starts to frame who should be involved, although it doesn't go into what role people play in specific areas. And of course, that will change from site to site. Importantly, it also doesn't cover how we will do this or with what resource. And I think some of the things that Lucinda and Krista have already been talking about start to answer some of those questions. It's very clear from the presentations that we've heard that in order to be successful and to deliver this really ambitious vision that we have, it's going to require a lot of innovation, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of determination. We will get things wrong. We will take some wrong steps, but we need to keep moving forward and not be deterred by the difficulty and the time that it's going to take to get this right.